Dice Tower Tonight, episode 76.
Boards, the word.
Welcome to Dice Tower Tonight, a video cast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On tonight's show, we're talking word games. Is having the largest vocabulary always the biggest advantage? Also, I'll have the chat playing the role of celebrity panel while we play a game with Crystal. We discuss some games we've played lately, and we answer questions from the audience live. My name is Eric, and joining me now, the horrible goose to my horrible goose. Here's Crystal.
It's me, and I am very excited to play cooperatively in Untitled Goose Game.
I love the little promo because there's like a goose and then another goose pops out. It's like, what? It's
like, you don't need two geese.
You don't.
But I'm sure excited about it.
My kids are very excited about it too. Like, oh, we can now play together. Yes, very excited. So,
very cool.
How's it going, Crystal? It's been a few weeks, although we did get to hang out for the final daily chat a little bit earlier than normal, which was a blast. But it's been 2 weeks since we're here for Dice Tower Tonight. How you been?
I've been pretty good, and I've heard from some people, including here in the chat from Coralu, that people have been missing the nightly chats here on the Dice Tower. So I'm really happy that you and I are still here for Dice Tower Tonight to give people that little bit of 9 p.m. Goodness here here on the Dice Tower.
We had to give them a taste of nothing for a little while so that they appreciate us more. That's what it was.
I mean, absence and the heart and all of that.
That sounds like something that people should say more often. Anyway, so we are talking about word games a little bit later on in the show, various types. We'll talk about our favorites. I've been writing down some examples. But before we get to that, we should probably talk about what we've been playing lately. Crystal, what's been on your table?
So, well, technically what's been on my table is nothing because we are still in a pandemic and I don't have anyone to play board games with. But on my digital table, on my computer, there have been some board games happening. And I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen so you'll be able to see. Ooh, it's actually going to let me share just the window. So I think this might work really well. Let's see. Are you able to see?
I will bring it up in 1 second. Watch this.
Okay.
Ta-da!
And of course, the dog is barking downstairs now, so that's helpful.
Let's
He's
do
very
this,
excited.
actually. We'll take off there we go. Ta-da!
All right. So this is Metro X. So this is a roll and write game. The Game Right has now picked up and published here in North America, but I believe was originally published in just Japan. Some of the stuff has changed from the original game to the new version, but I have only played this new version, so I cannot speak to the changes or differences per se. So this is technically one of those roll and write games that is a flip and write game. There's a deck of cards that's going to get flipped over one at a time, and all of the players use the same cards at the same time. So like a lot of roll and write games, everything is kind of simultaneous. Mm-hmm. The cards in the deck have numbers on them ranging from 2 to 6. And when a card gets flipped over, you write the number that got flipped into one of these colored train cars. So what I will actually do is I will show you. Oh, no, I'm just sharing this window. Oh, I can just draw on it, probably. I wonder if I can. Hold on. Watch this.
What?
Let's see if I can actually do this. So if a 3 got drawn, well, that's hard to read because that's a horrible color. Let's see if I can do this. Can you see that 3 that I just drew?
I can, yes, indeed.
Okay, so we're going to pretend that doesn't exist.
Yeah, forget that.
Yeah, so you would write a 3, and then you fill in the first 3 contiguous spaces along that train line with X's. So in this instance, I would mark off these first 3 spots with X's. And if you note, a lot of these lines in the middle of the map here all kind of start converging. So at a certain point, like let's say later, I wrote down a 2 in the pink line when a 2 got flipped over, and I marked this. Then later, if I wanted to put something in the yellow line, let's say a 5 got flipped up, and I wanted to write that here, I have to mark contiguous spaces, so I could mark this one, but then I would have to stop because there's an X in my way.
Oh.
Some of the cards in the deck have the word skip on them. If the card has the word skip on it, then you can continue beyond anything that you run into. You still have to do all of the blank spaces that are at the beginning of the line, so I can't skip blanks, but I can skip over previous X's. So, like, let's say if I erased that stuff, if, let's say, instead of a 5, that was a 3 with a 5 with a skip on it, then I could mark X, X, and then I could keep going along the yellow line, mark additional X's. Once you've filled in a train car completely, you can't mark anything else on that line, at least based on a number. But there are other special cards in the deck. There's a free card that will let you mark a single X anywhere. And then there are transfer cards that pop up. And when a transfer card pops up, then you mark the first available empty space in any line that you choose with a number based on the number of train lines that cross that space. So if a transfer card came up at this point in the game, I could take the first available spot on any line, so I would maybe choose the blue line. There are 2 lines that intersect this space specifically. So 2, and you get 2 points per line. So in this instance, I would write a 4 in this spot as my transfer, and that would give me points at the end of the game over in the transfers area. Your ultimate goal is to complete as many lines as you can completely. So if I had gotten to the end of the yellow line, for instance, I would get, if I was the first person to complete the yellow line, I would get 3 points, and I would mark that in my completed area. If someone else had already completed it before me, I would get second place points there. At the end of the game, you get points for all of the lines that you've completed, filled in all of the X's of, any transfer points that came up. You lose points based on blank spaces left on your board, and the numbers of points you lose are dependent on how many blank spaces you have available. It's not 1 point per space. It's a sliding scale. The most you can lose is 10 points total. Okay. You add it all up and you get your final score. It's one of those games that I knew I needed to show a visual for because it's hard to describe in an audio medium.
Yep.
So yeah, this is Metro X. Like a lot of roll and write games, it's relatively simple, but really, really fun. And the decisions that you have to make, like you're like, okay, there's 1 6 in the deck. And when that 6 comes up, the entire deck gets reshuffled and you start from the beginning again of the deck. And so you're like waiting for that 6 to come, but then you also know that like, if it comes, that you're going to go back to the beginning again, and there's only a certain number of different types of cards in the deck. So it was interesting because we'd be like, ooh, do I want to mark the X's off here, knowing that I'm going to need a skip card to come up to complete that line, or do I just put them over here, maybe waste a couple X's? The decisions were interesting, and I really liked it. It's light. It would be easy to teach to relatively anybody. I've said this before, but I'm hard pressed to find a roll and write game at this point that I don't like. So similarly to most others, I enjoyed this.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let me bring us both back in here again. I got this, and then we've got you, and there. Hey, we're back.
Yay.
Well,
but
very neat.
As far as like playing remotely, as you all saw, I literally someone took a picture of the board and I was literally using my computer to write on it. Like using the Photos app that Windows like just has natively. Most Windows programs are not that helpful a lot of the time, the built-in ones, but this worked great. I was able to do whatever I wanted with it. So pretty neat.
Very cool. This is one I've never played before, but I've heard many good things, and now that it's more widely available with a US version, I'm excited to try it.
Yeah, I've heard from a couple different people that they actually prefer the original version more. The size of the boards is smaller, which some people won't like, but it makes it more portable. These boards here that you saw in my screenshot, they're dry erase. They come just dry erase boards, which is great. So you don't have a pad of paper, but they're kind of large. They're about the size of the box, which from when I was looking at it, I think is probably, it's bigger than a quiver. So for me, I'd like to put roll and write games in my quiver, and this would not fit in there, but the original version might if I laminated the sheets.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So I was away this past week. My family and I were on vacation. We had rented a house, so we were sort of away from people, but still away from home for the week. But one excursion that we took was to a small game store on Cape Cod in Mashpee, Massachusetts. I took my eldest and let him pick out a game, which I haven't done in a little while. And the game that he wanted to bring home for his little brother is Slide Quest.
Ooh, good call.
This is from Blue Orange Games. I take it from your reaction. You've played this, Crystal.
I own this one and love it.
So, Slide Quest is it's billed as the video game board game. Okay, thematically, that's what it is. The game is played. Let me remove this. The game is played inside the box. So this is the lower portion of the box, and you have these little flippers. There's little notches here on the side. So all 4 of those go in there. And then you have the board. And I'm not going to knock anything over this way. This is the board that we're playing with. There's 20 different maps, different levels that you can play through. And each one has different features and stuff. So this one has a little gate. It also has little markings for bad guys that you're going to be placing on the board, and a start point and an end point. Also looks like you can gain a heart if you play that way. This all fits in the box like that. So now we've got the flippers that can go up, which is going to adjust the gravity of the board, because this is a dexterity game. It is a cooperative dexterity game, and the goal is to take your little knight, who has a ball bearing on the bottom, and he starts at the beginning, and doing this while holding it is not going to work, so we're going to put it there, and then sort of guide him along and try not fall into the hole. In this particular board, I would have little nasty bad guys who I also have to knock into other holes in order to complete the level. Each of the boards has sort of a different goal. Sometimes there's dynamite. Sometimes there's like a big boss that you have to deal with. You have to take out the minions first and then knock the boss. Sometimes you have to knock the dynamite into the holes. And they get progressively more difficult. You have a certain number of lives, and every time you fall in a hole, you lose a life. And you try and get as far as you can, or get through. I think there's either strings of 5 levels, or you can play the full mega game, level 1 through 20, and see if you can get all the way through. I thought this was maybe a little simple when I first tried it out, but the later levels do get more interesting. You can play this solo. They're like, if you really think you can make it work and get the dexterity, you really can only touch like 2 paddles at once. But you can play solo. You could play timed games. They have some difficulty sliders that can make it more difficult or less difficult. My eldest, my 12-year-old, really enjoys this. He's the one that picked it out, but he's happy with the purchase. My 9-year-old was a little resistant, but I think more just because he's resisting a lot of games these days. It has a lovely toy factor, and as a let's make a video game board game and let's work together to solve problems and solve goals. It works out very well. So I'm glad we picked it up and added it to the collection, and I think I'll probably win the 9-year-old over at some point. That is Slide Quest from Blue Orange.
Yeah, I actually tried this one for the first time about a year ago at Dice Tower Con in Florida. And they had copies for sale there, but only a limited few. And I tried the game. I was like, no, I'm going to try it first, and then I'll go back and buy it if I like it. And then tried it and immediately was like, oh, I want this in my collection, and went back and they were already sold out.
I went, I saw the same demo at Dice Tower Con and demoed it and flipped, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk around and explore some more. And then the next day, I think I said, you know what? I think I should bring that home.
And it was gone.
Yeah, they were sold out.
No, this one is especially fun. It's good with 2 people. I think if having an even number of people can be beneficial, because if you've got 2 people, you've got each of you controlling 2 flippers, or 4 people where everybody's only controlling 1. And it's funny because even though the puzzle to solve each one is somewhat easy, like for me personally, I usually have really good spatial reasoning in board games, but in this game specifically, when I'm only controlling one aspect of the four, my
Yes.
brain sometimes glitches and I think I need to do something when I really shouldn't be doing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like that it forces you to work cooperatively in a way that some cooperative games don't. Like, you can't quarterback this game. I mean, you can yell at people and say you do
Yes.
something, but like, you can't actually do things for people in this game. And I
Right.
think for people who really want to teach like pure cooperation, especially to kiddos, this one's really not a bad one at all, and it's super
No.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. There's also if you're in opposite directions, if you're trying to prevent the guy from going forward too far, you can have one player lay off their paddle or the other player increase their paddle. And then when you do both, then you overcorrect. And so it really requires a subtle touch. And for the kids, that's something they're still learning. It's like I'm either on or I'm off. And it's taking a little bit to say, all right, just kind of calm down. The name of the game store in Mashpee, it was, I want to say Dark Water. It's either Dark Water or Deep Water Games. I can't remember which of the two. Something Water Games in Mashpee. It was not a large store, and I think a lot of local stores have been hurting not being able to hold live events. They haven't been able to do, like, you can't really game in the stores right now, so they've become retail-only spaces, which is tricky. So I encourage you to order either gift certificates or order for curbside pickup from your local stores to keep them going right now. So I made a purchase there. I actually made a pre-order from a local store here in New Haven recently. I pre-ordered Pandemic Legacy Zero. Did that from a local store. So just as a sidetrack, definitely support your local stores there.
No, that's great. And I think it's neat because a lot of game stores are kind of pivoting to try and find new ways to bring in revenue and to, I think, get themselves known a little bit more. Like, I'll give a shout out to my local game store, which is run by Tim Mativier, who a lot of the people from the Dice Tower know because he runs Dice Tower West out here in Las Vegas. He owns a board game cafe here called Meepleville, and they've made a YouTube channel and are now doing interviews with board game personalities and designers, and honestly, just really good content. So I highly suggest people go check out the Meepleville channel here on YouTube because Tim's doing some really good stuff over there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so it's time to play a game, I think. Crystal, what do you think?
I think that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, good. So I'm going to try something that I've never tried before here on the show. Or before the show started, you said that's my favorite kind of game.
It is, because I do this to you a lot, and your face is always kind of like, oh no, what's going to happen? So I like when you do it back to me, because then it makes me feel like, turnabout is fair play.
So we are talking about word games in just a little bit. And I was thinking, maybe I can adapt one of my favorite word games. And I wasn't sure how to do a couple of my favorites, but I did hit upon one that we haven't tried here on the show. That's not a strict word game, but it is sort of a language game. That involves a celebrity panel and maybe a little bit of silliness. And so I have some arts and crafts. We're going to play Match Game.
I love the Match Game!
In normal Match Game, you're going to, there is a celebrity panel of 6 people, and the contestant and the panel are given a question with a blank. It is a fill-in-the-blank game. And the panel then sits there and writes as they play the theme music. And once the panel has locked in their answers for what the blank is filled in, the contestant then answers, and then you see how many of the panel gets matched. For our purposes here, chat, you are the celebrity panel. Specifically, the first 6 people to respond when I read the question will be the celebrity panel. The 6 answers that Crystal is attempting to match. Again, occasionally the way the chat shows up on my screen, I'm going to be looking at my view right here. Sometimes that shows in a different order than you may see, but no one's really winning anything, so don't get too upset. When you do enter an answer, please enter in all caps, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to spot. And if you want to make any snarky comments or chitter-chatter like the panel is wont to do in Match Game, that can be in standard case. But when you are entering in an answer, please put it in all caps. And Crystal, you'll have to hide the chat, of course, so that you can't see what we're doing. I have 4 rounds, 4 questions, and we're going to see. I have a goal. Should I share the goal of what I'm hoping you get, or do we just want to see how many points you can get?
Yeah, let's just see how many points I get, because so while I do love this game, when I've watched it in the past, I feel bad because occasionally the prompts lend themselves very strongly to a single answer, and people often sync up on that. But if all of the celebrity panelists answer differently, then it doesn't matter what you do, you can't get as many points.
Yes.
So
this can vary wildly. I'm just going I'm going to write down on the back of this card what I'm hoping you get. And we'll see. I'm not going to share it with you in the 4 questions if you can do that.
That if we wouldn't get a copyright strike for it, I would say that right now in the background we should be playing C&R by Weird Al, because Charles Nelson Riley was a famous panelist on the Match Game.
Yes. Or I actually thought maybe I could cue up the theme music from Match Game, but I also thought we might get a copyright strike from ABC since they are currently producing episodes of the show. So Kabuki says, isn't the panel supposed to all be drunk? That's up to you. I should probably mention this is a family-friendly show, so just be aware. We're not quite so risque as the broadcast television
show.
version.
Yeah, the broadcast show did have its moments.
Yes, it still does, actually. So you have a choice, Crystal. Which of the 2 questions would you like, A or B, from my wonderfully produced question panel?
I'm going to take B, and I have hidden the chat on YouTube, so I can see us, but not the chat currently.
B. Here we go. Convention Carl says, it would seem that Eric's love of Merchant of Venus has reached LARP-level enthusiasm. I signed up to play with him at Dice Tower West, and he showed up to the table wearing blank. Convention Carl says, it would seem that Eric's love of Merchant of Venus has reached LARP-level enthusiasm. I signed up to play with him at Dice Tower West, and he showed up to the table wearing blank. And this is where the music would be playing. And I actually went searching for sound-alike Match Game music, but I wasn't able to find anything that I could grab as quickly as I would have liked to play during the stream. But we can sort of hum the boom, 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 boom. We have one from the Mr. E. The Mr. E has their answer locked in. We've got Jerry has a answer locked in. Chicago Twilight has an answer, and Coraloo has an answer. That is 4. We just need 2 more, and we will have. All right, we have 5 and 6. William is the last answer. Shadowling also got in an answer. So we have the 6 we're looking for. Crystal, it is time for you to answer the question. It would seem that Eric's love of Merchant of Venus has reached LARP-level enthusiasm. I signed up to play with him at Dice Tower West, and he showed up to the table wearing...
So LARP implies costumes generally. I have not played Merchant of Venus. You and I have discussed this. So I know that it is a pick up and deliver game, and I know that it is set in space. So with just a general answer, I'm going to go with a space suit.
A space suit.
Because it's in space. So
that is an excellent answer. All right. So the Mr. E said space helmet. So judges, no, I'm not gonna count that one. I'm sorry. Jerry said green paint everywhere. Chicago Twilight said X-ray specs. Coraloo said tights. No, still not there. Shadowling said toga. And last but not least, William said spacesuit.
Yay!
So you score 1 point from William for a spacesuit. Good job, William. All right, so this might be more difficult than I expected, but that's okay.
This is why we do not set the goals in advance. Or we set them and don't say them.
So we're going to shuffle these around a little bit and put in some new questions. And now my high-tech, super deluxe Question number 2.
Ooh. Ah.
Which would you like, A or B?
Let's go with A this time.
A sounds like a really good answer. All right, here we go. Paranoid Patrick has reached new heights in his accusations playing Battlestar Galactica, said Tom. After this last check, he accused me of blanking like a toaster. Paranoid Patrick has reached new heights in his accusations playing Battlestar Galactica, said Tom. After this last check, he accused me of blanking like a toaster. Again, the music is now playing.
Yeah, this is hard.
This is trickier.
And I guess I can talk because chat's going to be typing furiously anyway. So it kind of feels like so obviously a toaster is a reference to a Cylon in Battlestar Galactica. So would people say things that are Cylon-esque or actual toaster-esque? Because a toaster is also an appliance.
Kabuki did get into the idea of the game by yelling, "How paranoid is he?" So
I almost did the same.
We have an answer from Bailey. We have an answer from Shadowling. We have an answer from Jerry. We have an answer from William. We have an answer from Pesci. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 from Chicago Twilight. So yeah, we are locked in. Crystal.
Okay.
Paranoid Patrick has reached new heights in his accusations playing Battlestar Galactica, said Tom. After this last check, he accused me of blanking like a toaster.
I think it's a boring answer, but it is the one that makes the most thematic sense. So I'm going to just say acting like a toaster.
Acting is an answer that very much makes sense.
Which is not great for Match Game. You want funny stuff, but I can't think of a good funny one.
Bailey said popping like a toaster.
I considered that.
Shadowling says the term from the show, which is fracking like a toaster. Jerry says burning toast like a toaster. William says cracking. Pesci says toasting. And Chicago Twilight says tanking.
Oh, okay. No match.
Other answers that came up, heating up from Kabuki, smiling, throwing bread, idling, breaking down quickly, shrieking, voguing, shining, ejecting. Nobody had acting like a toaster. So
right. No. Other things I was considering, like lighting up. So like I'm thinking like the red beam or regenerating like a toaster, but that doesn't fit with the game. So yeah, that was a tough one.
These ones are those are the hard questions.
Totally.
These next ones are really easy, and it's totally mathematically possible for you to reach the goal that I had hoped you were going to reach in 4 questions. Okay, so we are now. I broke out the stencils and everything. Question number 3.
They're so pretty.
Would you like A or B?
A, please.
A. All right. It's possible that Ambi is a little excited about introducing her twins to the board gaming hobby. Lately, rather than reading them Goodnight Moon before bed, she's been reading them the rules to blank.
Okay.
It's possible that Ambi is a little excited about introducing her twins to the board gaming hobby. Lately, rather than reading them Goodnight Moon before bed, she's been reading them the rules to blank.
Knowing Ambi really well makes this one interesting for me because I know what game she intends to teach them first.
Yes. Do you go with the obvious answer, or do you go with what you think chat is going to say?
I mean, I think I know what chat might say, but we'll find out.
Jerry says on the last one that they were going to say acting, but it sounded too boring. So I don't know.
I mean, hey, I admitted it was a boring answer, so I'm not offended by that.
All right, we have a lock-in from Coralu. We have a lock-in from Jerry. We have Doggo Splosion locking in an answer. We have, I already saw Oh, Jerry just forgot to put their answer in bold. Kabuki is in. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. William has the last one. We also have an answer from Shadowling. So William, Shadowling, Kabuki, Kid, Jerry, Doggo Explosion, and Coraloo are all locked in. Crystal, it's possible that Ambi is a little excited about introducing her twins to the board gaming hobby. Lately, rather than reading them Goodnight Moon before bed, she's been reading them the rules to blank.
Okay, so I could theoretically say Go Away Monster, because that is the game that she intends to teach them first. But I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say 18XX games.
18XX. We'll go to Coraloo. Coraloo said TI4.
Okay.
Jerry said 18XX games. So
Yay.
There's a point right there. Let me get my tally sheet out. Doggo Explosion said Twilight Imperium.
What? Okay.
Kabuki Kid said 1830, which is an 18XX game. We'll get a point for that. Shadowling said Call of Cthulhu.
Ooh, interesting.
And last but not least, William says 18XX.
Yay!
So there you go. You got that's your best round so far. And,
good job, chat.
That would have been the one that I was hoping people would answer. Other answers that came by: Robinson Crusoe, Last Light, Ticket to Ride, Stuffed Fables, which is a good one. I actually read early on. I read the rule book to Mice and Mystics to my then 5-year-old. Is that right? Was he that young? I think so. The 5-year-old, I was reading Mice and Mystics stories to him to get him interested, and he bought it. He fell for it.
5-year-olds are so gullible.
Yeah, they are. Okay, let's take this off. This is the final question. And, like I said, totally mathematically possible. Actually, no, it's not. Okay.
I'm telling you, I always felt really bad when, like, the two contestants on the show, one would get a question where all the celebrities answered the same way, so they at least had the chance to get a bunch of points, and then the other one, all the celebrities answered differently. It's like, that's not super fair.
There were a couple of questions that I thought about, but the answer seemed so obvious that it was going to be like, okay, this is either going to be a landslide or you miss it completely.
Right. That's what makes this game interesting, though. It's, I think, at least in the creation of the questions, is how do you make something where people can align but won't necessarily align?
Right. Maybe I'll share the bonus one when we're done. But for now, you have question number 4 and the choice of A or B.
Let's go with B.
Okay. We're gonna finish strong. Meticulous Marty is so meticulous.
How meticulous is he?
When sorting his games, he doesn't just baggy the components. He also baggies the blank. Meticulous Marty is so meticulous. When sorting his games, he doesn't just baggy the components. He also baggies the blank. Yes, Steve, we're playing match game. You gotta wonder if people join in right here in the middle.
I mean, honestly, that's got to happen with most of our streams. Like, if you join in right in the middle of the silliness, it's got to be very confusing.
Very much so. All right, I've got an answer from Box. Now, we have an answer from Coraloo. We have an answer from Goofy. We have an answer from Kabuki. Oh, no, Kabuki's just yelling, how meticulous is he? You're a little late.
It's on a delay, Eric.
The Mr. E. Hey, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, looks like we have our 6. Meticulous Marty is so meticulous.
How meticulous is he?
When sorting his games, he doesn't just baggy the components, he also baggies the blank.
Okay, so this one, I have 2 answers that I think are my biggest contenders. One would be the board, but like, is the board also a component? That's where. And then the other answer would be the actual box itself, like putting the whole box into a giant plastic bag, which that feels like the most meticulous thing that somebody could do. I'm going to go with box over board. Maybe I'll regret that.
Coralu said box.
Yay!
Which I actually blurted out when I was looking at Coralu's, so hopefully you weren't listening to me at all.
What's funny is I was, but that was already in my head prior to you blurting it, so I consider it fair game.
Sure. Goofy said box. So that's another point. Chicago said box.
Oh ho ho.
The Mr. E said boards.
Okay.
Shadowling said baggies.
Baggies the baggies. That's good. That's my favorite answer so far.
And Jerry, for the sixth answer, said box.
Yay!
So you ended with the best round possible. You got 8 total. I wrote down that you were hoping to get 12.
Wow!
That would have been, if you had a really good round, though. I think.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like 1/6. Well, even then, though, I would have had to have 1 phenomenal round and 2 like good rounds to make that.
So that's forget I said that.
You know what? No, I appreciate, Eric, that you're pushing me to be a better version of myself.
Okay. Well, you're welcome. Other answers that came up on that one: snacks. Tony. Tony.
Tony?
Yeah, I guess. You got a bag, Tony? Meeples, punch boards, cards, players.
Okay, that's funny. Like, if you, like, got a garbage bag and literally, like, okay, Tony, get in, you know.
His fingers.
Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I actually saw a guy who baggied all of his boxes, says Kabuki Kid. Anyway, that was...
Oh. Coralu has a really good a suggestion.
We should go with the ones that I mean,
yeah,
we could. There was only...
There's only one left, right?
There's only one left.
Okay, so you can read it, but then you're going to hide the chat, and you're going to see if you can match.
Let me go to another window.
Oh, yeah, because everything is visible in so many places for you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not looking at that part of the screen. Okay. Okay, this is the last question. Good news. Crystal's dogs have agreed to join her for game night. Bad news. The dogs keep insisting they play blank. Good news. Crystal's dogs have agreed to join her for game night. Bad news. The dogs keep insisting they play blank. So I'm gonna write down my answer.
Okay.
So I don't accidentally see something.
Yeah. And I will be keeping an eye on the chat for the first 6 all caps answers. I love that I could have picked the dogs at any given point theoretically, and that was the one that I didn't.
I actually seeded that one as one of the first 2 questions.
Really? And then my bouncing around just avoided it.
I don't know how many times it was in there, but all right, I am locked in.
All right, and we have 5 so far. We have 6 answers, so we are good.
Okay. So, good news, Crystal's dogs have agreed to join her for game night. Bad news, the dogs keep insisting they play Too Many Bones.
Okay. So, Doggo Explosion was our first answer, and they said punching Gloomhaven, which that might not make sense to everyone in the chat, but I can give clarification on what that means in a minute. Jeremiah said Isle of Cats.
Oh, that's a good one.
Hawkskull said Monopoly. Bailey said Isle of Cats.
Oh.
Kirk Wagner said Exploding Kittens. And Jerry said Isle of Cats.
Wow, I totally missed Isle of Cats.
But Too Many Bones is perfect, Eric. That's such a good answer.
I thought, and I actually thought fetch might have been the other answer.
So, in case anyone is curious why someone would suggest punching Gloomhaven as a game that you can play, not just Gloomhaven by itself, I will take this opportunity to give a little plug for a charity event that I am doing this weekend. This weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to be streaming all weekend on the Board Game Blitz Twitch channel to raise money through Extra Life for the Children's Miracle Network. Obviously, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of people, are not in secure situations financially. So I think helping out children's hospitals is more important now than ever, because a lot of people have ceased charitable giving for good reasons. And so I wanted to do something special. I am trying to raise $1,000 for the Children's Miracle Network this weekend. And as part of that streaming event, I'm going to be playing a whole bunch of different games, including a bunch of interactive stuff with the chat live. But one of the things I am also doing is I am punching out my copy of Gloomhaven live on the internet. I have had this game since fall of 2017. It has been sitting in my house unpunched because I hate punching games. And the Blitz Patreon supporters all adamantly said that this should be the time that I finally do it. I don't know if I'll get it done because I'm only working on that for a little while during the stream. But if you want to watch me punch out Gloomhaven this weekend for charity, you can. So, yeah.
So it's time to get to our discussion, and I feel like I should let you take the lead on this one, Crystal, because for anyone who has listened to Board Game Blitz, they know you are a fan of the English language and the origins of words, and our subject today is word games.
I was an English major in college. I have considered getting a master's degree in either linguistics or etymology just for fun, which I have not done because that's an expensive, fun thing to do.
Okay.
But I love language, and I love learning about where language came from and how it's built. It's always just fascinated me. And so word games tend to be games that I really, really love. And the one game that I've designed was a word game. So it's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. I think you and I discussed prior to our recording today that I think a lot of people think about word games as just spelling games or games where you're constructing words, but that's not necessarily always the case.
Sure. I think I sort of divide them into two major categories. You've got the party word games where there's sort of usually a time pressure or some trying to get your team to guess words, and it's a rollicking experience. And then the cerebral word games where it is a little bit more focused. These are the ones that some people really dislike because they're the ones you have to think about. You have the sort of the quiet table where everyone's thinking of a clue or how to spell a particular word. This is the stuff like Scrabble that everyone thinks of, or more lately Codenames or Decrypto. Those styles of games that are much more about thought as opposed to the frantic nature of trying to come up with something quickly.
Yeah. And some games like Scrabble are very narrow in what they allow you to do creatively. And I'm not hating on Scrabble, but when you're given a specific set of tiles and, you're forced to use just those tiles to create words, some people excel at those types of games and other people kind of lock up. If, they don't have the right thing in their brain, it's hard to do. Whereas a lot of more modern word games have given a little bit more leeway. I think a really good example of that is Wordsy by Gil Hova, which was actually a re-implementation of a previous game he had designed called Prolix.
Prolix, yeah.
But what's nice about Wordsy is you have a specific set of letters that you want to use, but you can use any letters you want in tandem with them. So you're not necessarily going for the longest word. You're just trying to use as many of the possible letters as you can, but you have all of the tools available to you to do that. And I have found people who don't typically like word or spelling games really enjoy Wordsy for that reason, because they kind of have more freedom.
Yes. Another one that has that advantage as well is Word on the Street. where you have all of the letters available to you. You can spell any word, but the letters that you use are going to advance in this sort of tug of war. And so you have certainly letters that you want to use because they're either in danger of being captured by your opponents or you're about to score them on their side. And so you have a focus and you have a category that you're working within, but you have the full freedom to come up with a word that's going to work with your skill set.
Absolutely. In the chat, Liz mentioned that she really likes Letter Jam. And in my notes for this episode, I wrote Letter Jam in all capital letters. It just came out this past year. And it has very quickly become one of my favorite word games. I will say, right after it released, a bunch of people referred to it as a party game. And Letter Jam really isn't a party game. Its pace is a little bit slower. It takes a little bit longer. In my mind, I mean, if people want to categorize it like that, it doesn't necessarily bother me. But I don't want people going into it expecting a fun, rollicking experience when that's not what it provides. But the fact that you're trying to solve essentially a puzzle that you can't see the pieces of in front of yourself.
Yeah.
While spelling words cooperatively with the group. And just the fact that it is cooperative, that's pretty rare. Most word games are competitive.
Yes. And I think it's because of the player count on Letter Jam, the fact that it plays up to 6 people. Just people have it in their head that a large player count is a party game.
I can see that.
I mean, we saw the same thing happen with Codenames, which it was also categorized as a party game when really it's not a party atmosphere. It is good for large groups, especially if you're going to do maybe 3 or 4 people per team. Then it does sort of feel like a group activity, but it is not. It's not. The party games I wrote down, Taboo, Catchphrase, Wavelength, I think does fit into the party game category.
I would agree.
Even though it's a little more cerebral, but it's still a more group experience. The collaborative, where are we going to put that dial sort of thing.
Yep.
Feels like a good thing.
Other party games that I wrote down, Just One, I think fits in this category. Medium works here as well. And one of my faves that not enough people talk about, Word Slam, is super great. I love Word Slam so much. Have you ever played it?
I don't think I've played Word Slam. There's a Word Slam family as well, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
I
feel like Word Slam family got sent to you as when Tom was still on the show. There was an episode where he was going to send both of us a game.
Yep.
And I feel like you ended up getting Word Slam family.
I think I wanted it too, which is weird.
Well, I didn't get it, and maybe Tom never sent it.
Maybe he never sent it. I know I tried to win it once at a convention, and my son has played it and has enjoyed it, but I never actually got a chance to play.
So for people who don't know what Word Slam is, it's a team-based game where there is a person who's giving clues on each side of a table. Essentially, you're facing one another. And the clue givers are both giving clues to the same word or phrase. So they both have the same information, and they are trying to get their teams to be the first to guess the thing. And what they have at their disposal to do that, they're not allowed to talk, but they have a bunch of cards with nouns, adjectives, verbs on them, like pretty much every general word in those categories that you could expect. So up, down, hot, cold, those types of things. They take those words and put them onto a tray in front of them without speaking and just try and use those cards to get their team to guess. But what's really interesting is since the two teams are guessing simultaneously, you're not only getting information from the cards that your clue giver is putting out, but you're also hearing what the other team is saying. And sometimes that makes perfect sense, and sometimes they're saying things and you're like, what are they looking at over there? This doesn't match what we're seeing at all. And it is raucous and fun in just the best way. And you can get a giant crowd of people on both sides of the table just shouting things out. At a convention especially, Word Slam is a great time.
I like crossed words.
We've played that here on the show.
Yes, that's actually not the one I was thinking of, though. That's a lovely game, too. But no, the crosstalk is the one I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Which is along the lines of Decrypto, where you're trying to get your team to guess the word, and it's the group word, so both teams are trying to guess. But when you give a clue, the other team gets to guess first. So you have to give a clue. You also get to give a secret clue to just your team. So you have to do something that in relationship to the secret clue makes sense, but in relationship to not the secret clue, just on its own, does not lead the other team in the direction you don't want them to go. And that is a very interesting hurdle to jump.
I've only played Crosstalk once, and for whatever reason, it did not scratch my brain in the way I wanted it to. But admittedly, after a single play, it's hard to make a judgment on a game. But I was surprised that I didn't dig it immediately. Somebody in the chat, Jeremiah, said, "Is Boggle a roll and write?" And I would say, yes.
Well, yeah.
It is.
Yes.
Maybe Boggle is like, aside from Yahtzee, it's one of the first roll and writes, probably.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, you're all using the same roll and trying to score off of that. It makes sense.
I've really enjoyed that over the past few years. Designers have come up with really unique and interesting takes on the word game genre. We've got stuff like people are mentioning in the chat, Insider, or similarly Werewords, where it's a social deduction game, but it's a word game. And then there was another one that I wrote down on my list, When I Dream, which I don't think most people would immediately think of as a word game, but technically is.
Yeah.
And When I Dream, it's also a little bit social deduction and a little bit memory. And when I played that one, I didn't expect to like it. And I really enjoyed When I Dream a lot. All I remember is sitting facing the wall at the game cafe with my eyes closed, repeating a series of words in my head as I was trying to listen to the people giving clues behind me. And it was stressful, but in a good way.
A few others that have flown by in the chat. Oh, I just lost the one I wanted to bring up. Trap words.
That one is fun.
I have not. So every time I pull out trap words, I realize I think it needs 4 players to play it, and I'm always sitting there with 3. Like I've had it for a year and a half or something, and I keep wanting to play it, and I always have 3 people at the table when I pull it out and go, oh. Nope, we can't play this one, and so that goes back on the shelf.
The like structure of the actual game itself is not that interesting. Like, you're progressing through different rooms of a dungeon, and that part of the game to me is somewhat forgettable, but the word part of the game is so fun. So it's similar to Taboo in that you're trying to get people to guess a thing, but there are certain words you cannot say. But what's interesting about this game as compared to Taboo is in Taboo, you know what you're not allowed to say, and you're just avoiding them. In Trap Words, you don't know what words you're not allowed to say because the other team gets to decide what those words are in secret.
Yes.
So they write down a list of words that you're not allowed to say secretly. You don't know what they are. And so now you're trying to describe a thing without using words that you think the other team wrote down. I vaguely remember having to describe lemonade. And I think at some point I got to liquid inserted through face hole. Like that was like one, like to get drink, like it's something that you drink. Those were the words that and it's so amusing because just listening to people try and mentally block out all the words that they think they can't say is great.
That's definitely one I want to get to the table at some point. Kabuki Kid brings up Letter Tycoon, which is another of my favorites. You actually purchase, after you're earning money by playing words, and then you actually purchase letters. So then when other people use those letters, you're going to get paid. You sort of get rent on those letters. And of course, the more frequent letters cost more to buy in the first place. And it becomes this property game while you're spelling, which is pretty cool.
I've never played Letter Tycoon, but it sounds like one I would like.
That's a good one. There's one other that we haven't mentioned yet that I wanted to bring out just because it is one of my favorites, especially after our earlier shenanigans, and that is the Granddaddy Password. We used to play this a lot in couples at game nights. Even at our like regular Sunday game group would pull this out every once in a while, because the strategy of that is similar to crosstalk in the sense that you're trying to give clues that are going to help your team, but not necessarily give it to the other players. And so finding some of those connections, finding something that's going to work for your partner and not necessarily give it immediately to the other team. But it's definitely one of those cerebral word games. It is not it's not a rollicky party game, even though it's sort of billed that way.
Yeah, I think that ends up being the case with a lot of word games. Like, they're sometimes more thinky than people give them credit for. But yet approachable, which is kind of nice, assuming that English is your native language. These word games can be really fun, but to that point, at least for those of us who do live in North America, in the United States, if you are playing with people who do not have English as a first language, these games can be really quite difficult. Obviously, there are games that are word games in other languages. In fact, actually, what's interesting is one of my favorite word games that we haven't mentioned, Punkatsu Factory, is a Japanese word game, but it's in English. It's never been published in America. It's only published in Japan, but it's in English. It's English characters, and that makes no sense to me, but I love it, and I'm glad that I have a copy of it. So
you bring up an interesting point, though, that a lot of these games are dependent on your knowledge of English or whatever language you're playing the game in. But if you are playing with people of similar skill levels in a language, it can be a good educational tool. If you are learning English as a second language, or learning another foreign language that is not English and playing in that language, some of these word games are a good way to build that vocabulary. Certainly makes it much more difficult. But a good tool for learning a language.
Absolutely. That's a really good point.
I think I've heard people using Dixit as a language learning tool, having to describe things in a different language and be as descriptive as possible, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is neat. And I mean, I know you and Tom have done lists of educational board games before. And obviously there are games that their intended purpose is to be an educational tool. But I think it's really neat when you can use a game that wasn't necessarily created to be educational in a way that is. I think that's neat, especially because games are generally pretty fun. And I know I would much rather play a board game than, say, fill out a worksheet or something.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Kabuki mentions Byword, which is a Sid Saxon word game. I bought that for my father because my dad liked Scrabble. He always wanted to play that one with us. And so I got him Byword. Kabuki said they didn't like it very much. I think it didn't really hit very well with my dad either, but it was at least a good attempt. I got him another one called Crossword Pyramids that I also thought he would enjoy. That one has a crazy reputation because on Board Game Geek, there was a whole campaign to fake ratings for it, and then the backlash for faking those ratings, and it became a whole mess that had nothing to do with the game itself, which was okay. It was fun.
You gotta love insignificant board game drama.
Oh yeah, and this was years ago. Are there any other word games that I know you have a list of your favorites, Crystal, that you wanted to bring up? But I feel like I've covered just about all the ones I jotted down.
Yeah, I mentioned most of mine. I had a couple others. I did see, I think somebody mentioned Scattergories earlier in the chat, and I did write down Scattergories categories, which I like regular Scattergories, but I think Scattergories categories is a little bit better. I also wrote down Tags, which I think is an underrated game that Z actually taught to me at, I think it was at Dice Tower West last year. It was a while ago. tags was kind of similar to crossed words in that you're trying to match up two different axes in a point on in the box.
Okay.
I also really like the Paco game shh, just
Oh.
SHH, which is a word game. That's another cooperative word game where you're trying to spell words using tiny cards in your hand, but you can't speak to the other players, and you're playing words one letter at a time, and you don't know what letters the other players have. So it's really interesting, and it's the size of a pack of gum. So as far as portability goes, it gets all of the thumbs up.
Yep. Kabuki mentions word domination, which is one that I picked up and have not had a chance to play a full version of. It has a cooperative version. My son attempted to sell it recently. He's like, "What is this? Why is this in my room? We should just sell this game." And I had to rescue it. And what else came up? Upwards, which is more of a classic, sort of like Scrabble, except you could build towers of letters and cover things up.
I had a copy of Upwards when I was a kid, and I played the heck out of that game. I really enjoyed that one. I never owned Scrabble, I don't think. I think Upwards was the word game that I preferred and played.
Yep. All right, well, we have a couple more minutes. We can stick around for just a bit longer. If there are any questions that you'd like to ask of Crystal or myself, we'd be happy to do so. Get those in. I'm trying to think if there were any other examples that showed up in the chat of word games? A game called...
I think we got a few, like Paperback, which I really like, showed up at one point, as well as Hardback, which is funny. I backed Hardback on Kickstarter and have it and have never played it.
I think I prefer Hardback, although Paperback is easier to teach. But Hardback has more flexibility in the words you can spell because you can use any card as a wild.
That's
both
right.
Of
you
these,
can flip them upside down or whatever, right?
Both of these are deck building spelling games, so you're actually buying letters that go into your deck, and then you can spell each round. But it offers more flexibility. In Paperback, you had to draw a wild card in order to use a wild, but in Hardback, you can just flip any card upside down, and it can be anything. It doesn't earn you anything, but it allows you to spell words. There's a lot more synergy. It has sort of a Star Realms suits feel to it. So you're trying to get a synergy of different cards going in your deck, which is pretty cool.
Thanks, Halo. I'm very happy with how my hair turned out.
It is very striking and electric. I like it a lot.
It is super bright. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if I can pronounce the username. Louise asked, "What is your favorite letter?"
Okay.
Do you have a favorite letter, Eric?
Well, I mean, so this has nothing to do with the fact that my name starts with S, but S, because in kindergarten we had an educational tool called the Letter People. It was. I'm really dating myself here, but this is the method for learning your ABCs, and each letter had a character, and I liked Mr. S with his super socks, and he had a theme song with that we had to listen to all the time.
Which you still know, don't you?
It goes bump bump ba-dum ba-dum bump bump. I'm a supersonic streak in the sky. Dun 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 dun. Mr. S to the rescue, they cry.
That was just as good as I hoped it would be.
That's my favorite letter, and that's why.
I don't know if I have a favorite letter. When I was growing up, it was the letter of my maiden last name. Which was Q, just because it's so unique to have a last name that starts with that letter.
Okay.
And I'm not reverting to my maiden name, so I'm not going back to the Q, but I liked that growing up, especially because when I would sign my name, I refused to do a cursive Q because it looks like the number 2, and I hated it.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what my favorite letter is. I guess maybe I would go with C because of my first name. I know what my favorite word is in the English language. Do you have a favorite word, Eric?
Oh boy, I'm particularly fond of defenestrate.
Okay, I mean definition-wise, that one's one of the best.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if I have a favorite.
I there's a specific reason why I like this word so much. Well, there's a couple of reasons, but my favorite word is superb because it's so much, it just like feels good to say.
Yes.
The P and the B sounds together. I love it. And also one of my favorite movies of all time is Empire Records. And there's a scene where the word superb gets said over and over again. And it's just great.
I saw a question from James. What do you and Crystal think of Star Trek Lower Decks so far?
So we're 2 episodes in. Tomorrow will be episode 3. I'm really enjoying it so far. I think at this point it's hard to give any, like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, because they are really still introducing the characters.
Yeah.
But so far what I've seen is really neat. It feels like they've written these characters like they're kind of an embodiment of the fans themselves. Like excited about Star Trek and the world it is. They just happen to be in it. So, like they have characters that are referencing more well-known characters just as like these big idols of theirs. And it kind of feels like it's like if a fan was in the show, that's what, they're ragtag and they're doing the stuff that nobody wants to do on the starship. And honestly, I'm really excited to see more of the behind the scenes stuff that would happen on a starship, as well as I didn't realize before the show aired that the ship that they're on specifically is dealing with second contact with alien races. And that is a really fascinating concept that Star Trek has not really explored in the past. And I'm finding it really interesting. I don't know if they'll stick with that specific aspect in every episode going forward, but I think it's really neat.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It is certainly a shift from the more serious Star Trek series. It obviously does not take itself very seriously. But the characters are fun. I'm enjoying the interplay. The pace is really good. The theme song, while I enjoy it, sounds very much like the Orville theme.
Oh, really?
I'm just like, there are just some thematic elements that are very similar, which I guess makes sense because the Orville is also sort of a comedic sci-fi series. But so far, so good. 2 episodes in is pretty good.
And we've got, 8 more episodes of Lower Decks, and then immediately after that, we get season 3 of Discovery, which I am so excited about.
I am very excited for season 3. I keep trying to get my wife to catch up. She was with me on Picard and watched the whole season, and she's been watching Lower Decks with me, but I have not gotten her to get caught up on Discovery because there's so much to do. I don't feel like there's just a jumping in point on Discovery that you can just say, okay, here we go. You kind of need to go from the beginning.
You do.
And I'm a little, I haven't been able to get her to commit to 2 seasons of catch up. So I might be watching that alone once that starts.
Well, and it doesn't really help that, in my opinion, the first 2 episodes, while they are good, they are 2 of the weakest episodes of season 1.
Yeah.
So I think for most people, like, you really need to watch the first 3 episodes to see if you're going to like the show. And even beyond that, it just gets better and better and better and better as it goes. It doesn't start off badly, but it's one of those shows that they like a little bit shaky right off the bat potentially, and then they just hit the ground running pretty soon.
Yes. But you do need to sort of watch those first 2 episodes to get the
groundwork. You need the context.
You can't just jump in. There's just too much. I thought about writing a primer. Like, okay, so here's Burnham, and she's it just. Yeah.
I honestly, for me personally, I don't know in what order the episodes from season 1 were shot. I am assuming based on the way they appear that they were shot somewhat in order, even though that's, not always the case with most shows. But I think, this is not spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched it, but I think the actors and actresses playing Klingons were struggling with the prosthetics early on and really worked their way into becoming familiar and comfortable with them. Specifically, Mary Chieffo, who plays L'Rell, she is brilliant. But I think she wasn't as strong in those early episodes. And to me, this is pure speculation, but I'm guessing it has to do with the extreme prosthetics that the Klingons have to wear.
Yeah. This might be a good one to finish. Did you have any nicknames growing up?
Oh, gosh. I had a lot of nicknames growing up. In fact, my friends and I, like, we specifically, like, were weirdly obsessed with giving each other, like, nicknames. So I remember in middle school, my friend Rachel called me Sparky, but I don't remember why. Um, Another friend, I used to wear these sandals all the time that were Speedo brand, and so she started calling me Pedo, which doesn't make sense either. Um, let's see. When I was in an improv troupe in high school, we had got to choose our improv name, and since my last name did start with a Q, I was Q Dog, spelled Dawg. So that was my improv name. My mom called me Sugar. That was her, like, my sister was Pumpkin and I was Sugar.
Okay.
You know, the cutesy names that your parents give you. None of my names are very flattering, as a matter of fact. So let's hear yours, Eric.
I mean, I didn't really have many, but for a while I was known as Elvis because I had let my hair grow and then just like swept it up and back. So I had this crazy pompadour sort of thing going on. And I kept that for a while. But like 7th, 8th grade or so, I was known as Elvis, and people would yell it out the door or out the window of the bus as I went by. So it wasn't a good nickname.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my 7th grade picture is not great.
I think we all have some school pictures from back in the day that are not ideal. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you're a little bit older than I am, but I started elementary school in 1990. So like I was just like off the tail end of the big hair of the 80s. So a lot of those early elementary school pictures are very curly and poofed hair with giant ribbons and all of that. Kabuki Kid's saying they need photos of the pompadour.
Yeah,
I wonder if I could find. I bet I could get my mom to take a picture of a couple of old school photos of me.
I'm sure I have them somewhere. They're in my yearbook. I could probably track those down. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Which seems like a good place to stop as we
It sure does.
Plan for more personal humiliation in the future.
Well, this has been a lovely evening, and even though I did not necessarily hit your goal for match game, I think the chat did great during it, and this has been a really fun one, Eric.
This was fun. You know, sometimes you gotta just try stuff and see if it's gonna work.
Yep. So those of you in the chat, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please do me a quick favor before you leave and hit the thumbs up button below the video. I can already see that some of you did that, so you are the best. Helps the YouTube algorithms. I also hope that I will see some of you this weekend as part of my charity stream. Even if you have nothing to donate, that is totally cool. Just having people in the chat on Twitch is beneficial. So if you can't donate, that's totally fine. Please come and hang out. Share information about it. If you go to Twitter, you can go to the Board Game Blitz Twitter or my Twitter, and you'll find information about the stream, including the schedule. Has a lot of different events. The Brothers Murph, which you all know from here on the Dice Tower, are doing This Quiz is Broken on Saturday morning, Pacific time. Ambi's going to be hosting a couple streams. I'm doing a bunch of stuff. We're doing karaoke. We're doing Jackbox games, all of the things. So please come and join me this weekend as I try and raise money for Children's Miracle Network. It's such a good cause. And then for Dice Tower tonight, we will see you all again in 2 weeks. And I'm going to look at what date that is because, oh my gosh, is that going to be? It's in September.
It's in September.
This year, yeah. I can't even.
September 2nd.
So we will see you on September 2nd at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, I'm Crystal.
I'm Eric.
And this has been Dice Tower Tonight.
Thank you for watching. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. Crystal and I will see you in 2 weeks for another installment. Our show is supported by viewers like you. Thank you. Dice Tower Tonight is produced by Crystal and me with assistance from Tom Vassell, Mike Delisio, Roy Cannaday, and Rob Searing. Duff Goldman's trip to take in some Broadway shows is brought to you by A Cake Artist Goes to New York. Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at coolstuffinc.com. Give us your feedback on the Dice Tower Guild at Board Game Geek, on Facebook or Twitter, or by emailing us at crystal@dicetower.com or eric@dicetower.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network. Find something new at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all of us at the Dice Tower, have
Have
fun gaming.
gaming.
Someone in the chat suggested that we now need to give each other nicknames. So that's our homework for
That's our homework. All right, we'll have to work on that.
Bye-bye, everybody.